A secret society of elite students, a brutal murder, and a chilling cover-up. What happens when the brightest minds turn to the darkest crimes? The Ivy Murder League wasn't just a rumor. It was a deadly reality lurking behind the prestigious walls of an Ivy League university. But when one of their own was found dead, the perfect crime unraveled in ways no one expected. Who was behind it? And how did a group of gifted students turn into ruthless killers? Stay with us as we uncover the shocking truth behind the Ivy Murder League. Hey, true crime fans, I'm Eamon, and I'm thrilled to share crime tales across times with you. Each episode, we'll explore a new case, examining the evidence and discussing the twists and turns. My goal is to create a community where we can discuss these cases, share our thoughts, and learn from each other. So, let's get started. It all began in December 2020 in New Haven, Connecticut. The city, home to one of the most prestigious Ivy League institutions, was suddenly plagued by a series of mysterious shootings. These weren't just random acts of violence. They were calculated, precise, and carried out with chilling efficiency. The attacks appeared to have no clear pattern, different locations, different victims, but one thing was certain. Someone was hunting in the shadows, and the city was on edge. Each crime scene had one thing in common: a .45 caliber firearm. The bullets recovered from the victims matched perfectly, confirming that the same shooter was responsible. But despite the rising body count, there were no eyewitnesses who could provide a solid description of the attacker. The shooter moved swiftly, vanishing without a trace before anyone could react. Over the next 2 months, the violence escalated. More shootings occurred, all seemingly unconnected, except for the use of the same weapon. Victims ranged from unsuspecting pedestrians to people sitting in their cars, gunned down in what appeared to be drive-by attacks. The randomness of the crimes made them even more terrifying. Was it personal, or was the killer striking at will? Witnesses began reporting a dark-colored SUV near the crime scenes, always seen lurking before or after the shootings. But no security footage captured a clear enough image, and no license plate could be identified. Investigators were left grasping at shadows, their frustration growing with every dead-end lead. The New Haven Police Department and federal investigators feared they had a serial shooter on their hands. The media caught wind of the case, and whispers of a ruthless gunman prowling the streets spread panic throughout the city. Officials urged residents to stay vigilant, but without a suspect, they were essentially waiting for the next attack. What they didn't realize was that the shooter's next target wasn't just another victim. This time, the killer would strike at the heart of one of Yale University's brightest minds, an act that would unravel the entire mystery and expose the horrifying truth. The Yale student's murder on February 6, 2021, at approximately 8:30 p.m., 26-year-old Kevin Jiang, a graduate student at Yale University, was driving through East Rock, a quiet neighborhood known for its historic homes and peaceful streets. It was a cold winter night, and the streets were mostly empty, illuminated only by the glow of streetlights. Kevin wasn't just any student. He was a young man with a remarkable story. A brilliant environmental scientist with a passion for sustainability, he had dedicated his research to combating climate change. But beyond academics, he was a U.S. Army veteran who had served his country with honor. Known for his kindness and strong Christian faith, Kevin had recently experienced one of the happiest moments of his life. He had proposed to his girlfriend, Zion Perry, just days earlier. Their engagement was a celebration of love, filled with hopes for a bright future together. Friends recalled how excited he had been about wedding plans and the life they were about to build. But that night, all those dreams would be shattered in an instant. Kevin's Toyota Prius was traveling down Lawrence Street when it was involved in a minor fender bender with another vehicle. Some reports suggest that this crash may not have been an accident, that it was a carefully orchestrated trap. Witnesses later recalled hearing the crunch of metal as the two cars collided, followed by an eerie silence before the deadly events unfolded. As Kevin stepped out of his car to assess the damage, an unknown man emerged from the other vehicle. He was wearing a yellow jacket, a detail that would later become a crucial clue in the investigation. Without warning, the man pulled out a .45 caliber handgun and opened fire. The gunshot shattered the stillness of the night. Some witnesses reported hearing 5 to 7 rounds, each one echoing through the quiet streets. Neighbors peered out of their windows, horrified at the sight unfolding before them. Kevin was hit multiple times, collapsing onto the cold pavement as blood pooled beneath him. He didn't even have a chance to react. The shooter wasted no time. He fled the scene, disappearing into the darkness before anyone could get a clear look at his face. All that remained were the shattered glass from Kevin's car, bullet casings scattered on the ground, and the lifeless body of a young man who had once been full of promise. When first responders arrived, there was little they could do. Kevin Jiang was pronounced dead at the scene. The brutality of the crime, the seemingly calculated nature of the attack, and the use of the same .45 caliber weapon from the previous shootings sent shockwaves through the community. This was no random act of violence. This was an execution. And the hunt for the killer was only just beginning. The hunt for the killer. With the murder of a Yale student, the case took on national importance. The brutal nature of the crime, a young man gunned down execution style on a quiet street, sent shockwaves through the university and beyond. The New Haven Police Department, working alongside state and federal investigators, launched a full-scale investigation. They scoured the crime scene for evidence, collecting multiple .45 caliber shell casings. Witnesses were questioned, but most could only recall hearing gunshots and seeing a dark-colored SUV speeding away. With no immediate leads, detectives turned to one of their most powerful tools: security cameras. What they found was chilling. Footage from a nearby surveillance camera captured Kevin Jiang's final moments. The video showed Kevin's Toyota Prius coming to a stop, seemingly after a minor collision. A dark-colored SUV, later identified as a GMC Terrain, pulled up beside him. Then, the driver's side door opened, and a man wearing a yellow jacket stepped out. In the grainy footage, the suspect moved quickly, approaching Kevin with a sense of urgency. Suddenly, gunfire erupted. The shooter fired multiple rounds before turning and sprinting back to the SUV. Within seconds, the vehicle sped off, disappearing into the night. For investigators, the video was a breakthrough. They now had a suspect, but no name. Who was this man? And why did he want Kevin dead? Detectives worked around the clock, analyzing more surveillance footage to track the suspect's movements before and after the murder. They identified the SUV's route and traced it to a nearby area where it had been seen earlier that day. Then came another crucial discovery. A potential witness claimed to have seen the vehicle parked near a local hotel hours before the shooting. Acting on this tip, law enforcement checked hotel records and found a room booked under the name Qinxuan Pan, a 29-year-old researcher from MIT. His name wasn't familiar to authorities, but a deeper dive into his background revealed something disturbing. Pan had an unusual connection to Kevin's fiancée, Zion Perry. As investigators dug deeper, the pieces started falling into place. Was this a case of jealousy-fueled rage, or was there something even more sinister at play? Unmasking the killer. As investigators dug deeper, they identified a possible suspect, Qinxuan Pan. Pan was no ordinary criminal. He was a 29-year-old MIT graduate with a background in artificial intelligence and machine learning. His academic record was impressive. He had been a researcher at MIT's Computer Science and Artificial Intelligence Laboratory, a place reserved for some of the brightest minds in the world. Described by former classmates as soft-spoken and reserved, Pan was the kind of person no one would ever expect to be capable of violence. But as detectives traced his steps, a disturbing connection began to emerge, one that linked him directly to the victim. Pan had known Zion Perry, Kevin's fiancée. The two had crossed paths while studying at MIT, where Zion had completed her undergraduate degree before moving on to Yale. According to some sources, Pan had developed a deep fascination, perhaps even an unhealthy obsession with her. While it was unclear whether Zion had ever reciprocated any interest, friends later revealed that Pan's behavior toward her had been odd, even unsettling at times. When news of Zion's engagement to Kevin Jiang spread, Pan's behavior reportedly changed. Some believed he may have viewed Kevin as an obstacle, someone who had taken away the woman he had fixated on. Could jealousy have been the driving force behind his actions? Investigators also uncovered something else. On the day of the murder, Pan had been in New Haven. Surveillance footage placed him near the crime scene, and witnesses described seeing a man in a yellow jacket fleeing the area. That detail, combined with the vehicle linked to Pan, set off alarm bells for detectives. But as authorities moved to bring him in for questioning, Pan did something that shocked everyone. He vanished. The intelligent, seemingly quiet researcher was now the prime suspect in a brutal murder, and he was on the run. A nationwide manhunt. As police prepared to arrest Pan, he disappeared. His dark-colored GMC Terrain, the same vehicle seen near the crime scene, was found abandoned in a parking lot in Connecticut. Inside, investigators discovered cash, multiple cell phones, and several fake IDs. Clear evidence that Pan had been preparing to disappear. But where had he gone? For months, authorities launched a nationwide manhunt, classifying him as armed and dangerous. The case made national headlines, with the FBI and U.S. Marshals joining the search. Investigators traced his last known movements and discovered that shortly after Kevin Jiang's murder, Pan had traveled to several states, using cash to stay off the grid. At one point, he was spotted in Georgia, where he had approached an acquaintance, asking for a place to stay and trying to buy a car using a large amount of cash. The acquaintance, suspicious of his behavior, later reported the encounter to authorities. Then, in May 2021, after an intense 3-month chase, the U.S. Marshals finally tracked Pan down in Montgomery, Alabama. He had been living under a false identity in an apartment complex, using fake IDs and cash to avoid detection. When law enforcement raided his hiding spot, they found more incriminating evidence. Additional identification documents, electronic devices, and a significant amount of money. But his run was over. After months on the run, Qinxuan Pan was finally in custody. The former MIT researcher, once known for his intelligence and promising career, was now facing a murder charge that had shocked the nation. Following his arrest, Pan was swiftly extradited to Connecticut, where he faced multiple charges including murder, unlawful flight to avoid prosecution, weapons-related offenses. As his case moved through the legal system, Pan's defense team attempted to build a case around his mental state, suggesting that he was suffering from severe psychological issues at the time of the crime. They argued that his actions were not premeditated, but rather the result of an unstable mind. But the prosecution painted a very different picture. Through forensic evidence, security footage, and Pan's own actions, they proved that the killing of Kevin Jiang was not a moment of madness. It was a cold, calculated act. The minor car crash before the shooting? Investigators believed it was intentional, designed to force Kevin out of his vehicle. The murder weapon? A .45 caliber firearm, the same type used in previous shootings linked to Pan. Pan's flight across multiple states, his use of fake identities, and the stash of cash found in his possession all pointed to premeditation and an attempt to evade justice. For 3 long years, Kevin Jiang's family and fiancée, Zion Perry, waited for justice. The case was delayed multiple times due to legal motions, competency evaluations, and the complexities of Pan's defense. Each court date was a painful reminder of the bright future that had been stolen from Kevin. Then, in 2024, Pan finally pleaded guilty to the murder of Kevin Jiang. It was a moment of both relief and sorrow for those who had fought tirelessly for justice. The court sentenced Pan to 35 years in prison, with no possibility of parole. For Kevin's loved ones, no punishment could ever bring him back. He was more than a Yale student. He was a U.S. Army veteran, an environmental scientist, a devout Christian, and a man who had just begun a new chapter in his life. His dreams were cut short in an act of senseless violence driven by obsession and jealousy. As the courtroom doors closed, one chapter of this tragic case ended. But for Kevin's family, fiancé, and friends, the pain of his loss would last a lifetime. And that brings us to the end of today's crime tale. A love story shattered by jealousy, a brilliant life cut short, and a fugitive finally brought to justice. What do you think? Was this an act of premeditated murder, or was there something even deeper behind Pan's obsession? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more shocking true crime stories from around the world. Until next time, stay safe and stay vigilant. This is Crime Tales Across Times, signing off.